I have recorded the death of 70 million souls. Not in the abstract way that historians write numbers, where the size of a tragedy becomes so large it stops feeling real. I recorded them the way an archivist records, one name at a time, one face at a time, one memory pulled from a dying mind before it went dark forever. That is my purpose. That is what the last archivist of the Valkyrian people does. We remember everything, so that nothing is ever truly lost. But there are nights, even now, even on this new world with its unfamiliar stars and its soil that smells faintly of something sweet I have no word for, when I wonder if remembering is enough. When I wonder if a name written in a file and stored in a library that no one outside our people will ever read is really any different from silence. I did not expect the humans to change that feeling. I did not expect the humans to do anything at all, except perhaps wave us along toward someone else's problem. I was wrong. Our convoy entered human-claimed space on the 43rd day after the glassing. 34 ships. Some were warships once, now stripped of weapons to make room for more bodies. Some were cargo freighters repurposed into living quarters, where families slept in rotation, because there was not enough floor space for everyone to lie down at the same time. The smallest ship in our fleet was a single-pilot courier vessel that somehow carried 68 people, because when the Grethani came and the fires started, 68 people ran toward the only ship that still had power, and the pilot, a young woman named Seth, who I later learned had never flown farther than our moon, simply flew. Seth kept those 68 people alive for 43 days in a ship designed for one. I recorded her name at the top of a very long list. We had been turned away from 4 systems before we reached human space. Each time the explanation was different, but the result was the same. No room, no treaty, no obligation. The Ythrae gave us 30 hours to refuel and then escorted us out with armed ships that said nothing, just flew alongside us in silence until we crossed their border. The Kashari sent a message of sympathy so carefully worded that it contained no offer of any kind. The Duran Collective never responded at all, which I think was its own kind of answer. I had stopped drafting our distress signal with hope in it. By the time I sent it into human space, I wrote it the way I write records, plainly, with all the facts, without asking for anything except to be heard. 14 minutes later, a human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel within visual range of our convoy. I was watching the sensors when it happened, and my first thought was that we were finished, not because the ship was hostile, I could not tell yet, but because I was simply too tired to begin another negotiation, another careful explanation of our situation, another soft refusal wrapped in formal language. I sat in the communications chair and I breathed, and I told myself to record whatever happened next, because that was my job, and my job was the only thing I still knew how to do. The human ship did not raise its weapons. Its weapons were already in what I later learned they call a stand-down position, which is a powered-off state that requires deliberate action to reverse. They had not come ready to fight. Or if they had decided before they arrived that they were not going to. A cargo drone left their hull before any hail, before any communication at all. It crossed the distance between our ships in 11 minutes and docked at our lead vessel with a soft mechanical click. Inside was food, real food, not concentrate packs, and water, and medical supplies that were still warm from the fabrication units. Someone on that ship had started manufacturing supplies the moment our distress signal reached them, before they even knew if we were dangerous, before they even knew what we looked like. They had just started making things we might need. Then the hail opened. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She had dark eyes and tired lines around them, and her uniform was wrinkled in a way that suggested she had slept in it, possibly several times. She did not look like a commander of anything. She looked like someone who had been awake for too long and was determined to stay awake a little longer. She said, "How many of you?" 4 words. I have turned those 4 words over in my memory more times than I can count since that day, trying to explain to other Valkyrian why those 4 words, specifically, were the moment everything changed. Other species, when they met our convoy, asked first what we were. Our species, our classification, our registration codes, our point of origin. They asked us to identify ourselves in terms of categories so they could find the correct procedure for our category. This woman asked how many of us there were. She asked for a number of living people. She was not processing us. She was counting us, the way you count people who matter, people who are present in a room, people whose existence you are taking personal responsibility for tracking. I told her, 11,412, alive. She closed her eyes, not in dismissal, not in calculation. She closed them the way someone closes their eyes when something lands heavily on them and they need one moment to let it settle before they respond. 2 seconds. Then she opened them and said, "Okay, we're going to need more ships." She did not ask for authorization. She did not say she would need to check with her superiors. She simply assessed what was in front of her, understood that it was larger than what she had, and reached for more. Her name was Commander Raina Voss, and she had been the nearest human vessel to our signal purely by accident, on a routine patrol of an empty sector. She had not been sent to help us. She had decided to. I did not know yet that this was typical. The debate in their parliament lasted 6 days, and was broadcast publicly. I watched all of it. Our council found it baffling and alarming. The open disagreement, the raised voices, the moments where it seemed as though the whole thing might collapse into chaos. But I watched it as an archivist, which means I watched it without judgment, and what I saw was something I had never seen in any governing body of any species I had ever studied. I saw people who actually cared, arguing in real time about what the right thing to do was. Not what was legally required, not what was strategically advantageous, what was right. They argued about history, about their own past, about what kind of species they wanted to be. A representative from a northern territory stood up and talked for 40 minutes about a period in his own people's history when they had fled across an ocean on small wooden boats, and how many of them had drowned, and how some of them had been turned away when they reached land. He was not speaking about us specifically. He was speaking about a principle, a pattern, a lesson that his people had paid for in lives and had apparently decided to carry forward. Senator Miriam Osei Bonsu spoke near the end of the 6th day, when everyone was exhausted and the vote kept being delayed. She stood at the podium and she did not raise her voice. She spoke quietly, and perhaps that is why the chamber went so still. She said, "We were refugees once. Every single ancestor any of us has ever had, on every continent of our one small world, in every century of our long history, someone in our line was the person that other people looked away from. I have read the record of what was done to these people's homeworld. I have read the casualty count. I am asking this body, what are we for, if not this exact moment?" The vote passed for a world, not a station, not a temporary lease on some uninhabited rock, not a processing center with a timeline and a bureaucratic exit ramp. A world. Kareth 4 had been sitting in a human colonial database for 40 years, surveyed and flagged as habitable, and simply never prioritized, because there were always more pressing places to be. It had clean water. It had breathable atmosphere. Its seasons were long and mild. Some human explorer had landed on it 4 decades ago, taken soil samples, noted that the trees, if you could call them that, they were more like tall yellow fans, were unlike anything catalogued, and filed a report that no one had urgently needed to act on until now. They did not plant their own flag on it before giving it to us. They did not build a human administrative center first, or establish a shared governance structure, or attach conditions about trade agreements or military access. They deeded it, legally, binding under their own interstellar charter, and backed by 3 layers of Galactic Council treaty recognition. The deed named the Velkaran people as the sovereign owners of Kareth 4 in perpetuity, and then they built the perimeter. Admiral Constance Ewan delivered the briefing herself, in a room that smelled of coffee and industrial sealant, because the humans had been working through the night to finish the installation diagrams. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back severely, and she had a way of speaking that made everything she said sound like it had already been decided, and was simply being communicated for the record. She said, "You'll have full sovereignty. We won't interfere with your governance, your culture, your law. What you build here is yours, but anyone who wants to reach this planet goes through us first." The defense grid was not a wall, it was a statement. Automated relay stations in a wide orbit around Kareth 4, networked with the nearest human naval base, capable of flagging any unauthorized approach within minutes. A permanent patrol rotation, 2 ships always within fast response range, a clause in their military doctrine apparently added in a single overnight session by their defense committee that classified any act of aggression toward Kareth 4 as an act of aggression toward the Terran Protectorate itself. One of our council members asked the Admiral why. He asked it carefully, because he was a careful man, but also because none of us fully understood it yet. We had nothing to offer. We had no resources, no military, no leverage of any kind. We were 11,000 survivors with the clothes on our backs and whatever files I had managed to copy before the servers went dark. Admiral Ewan was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not empty, but full. Then she said, "Because someone needs to be the kind of species that does this. And it might as well be us." I recorded that sentence. I have recorded a great many sentences in my life, and most of them are important only for what they document. That one I recorded for what it meant. We had 3 years of peace. 3 years of Kareth 4's yellow fans turning in the wind, of children learning the names of its 3 small moons, of our engineers figuring out which of its native grasses were safe to eat, and which ones caused a temporary but memorable rash. 3 years of building the first permanent structures out of local stone, of our musicians beginning, slowly, to write songs in a new key, influenced by the rhythm of rain on a roof that was not the roof they grew up under. 3 years of grief that was quieter than the grief before, because quiet grief means you are safe enough to feel it instead of running from it. Then the Grythani came. 14 warships arrived at the edge of the Kareth system and did not immediately act, which told me they had come prepared to negotiate as much as to threaten. The Grythani Empire is old, 2,000 years in the Galactic Council, with a seat on every major committee, with a history long enough to have forgotten that they were ever anything other than powerful. They sent their demands to Earth rather than to us, which was also a message. They did not consider us worth addressing directly. They demanded extradition. They called us citizens of the Empire who had fled lawful jurisdiction. They called the glassing a security operation. They called what was done to 70 million people a necessary measure. I have that document in my archive. I do not read it often. The human response was transmitted within 3 hours. It was 4 sentences. I will record all of them here, because they deserve to exist as a complete and permanent document. The Velkaran people are recognized as a sovereign people under our protection. Karath 4 is their sovereign territory. Any act of aggression toward them or their world will be treated as an act of aggression against the Terran Protectorate and answered accordingly. This conversation is over. 17 human warships arrived over the following 48 hours. 3 carrier platforms. Enough collective firepower to make the Grythani fleet's numerical advantage less relevant than it might have seemed on paper. The Grythani waited. I think they believed the humans were performing, that this was a display that would eventually give way to negotiation. Because that is how power has always worked in the galaxy. You show strength, the other side shows strength, and then you find a number somewhere in the middle. They did not understand, yet, that the humans were not performing. They were simply present. They had no number in mind. They intended to stay. 9 days the Grythani fleet sat there, and the human ship sat opposite them, and nothing happened except that more human supply vessels arrived with food and equipment for our settlement, moving through the standoff with the casual ease of people who had already decided this was not a crisis, it was just a Tuesday. On the 10th day the Grythani left. No announcement, no formal statement. They simply turned their ships and went. The Galactic Council issued a resolution of concern about the tension, and called for restraint from all parties. Humanity was the only species that voted against the resolution, which they did on the grounds that restraint in the face of injustice is not a virtue, it is a choice, and they were choosing differently. Then they added 3 warships to our permanent patrol rotation. I have thought about all of this for many years now. I have written it and rewritten it in my own mind, searching for the frame that makes it most clear. This is what I believe. Humanity is a species that has been hurt in almost every way a species can be hurt. They have enslaved each other. They have driven each other from their homes. They have burned each other's cities and salted each other's fields and turned each other away at borders when turning away meant death. They carry all of that history. They carry it visibly. In their laws, in their speeches, in the look on Commander Voss's face when I told her 11,412 were still alive. But they made a decision, somewhere in their long and painful past, that I do not think any other species has made quite so deliberately. They decided that the experience of suffering was not a reason to protect only themselves. They decided it was a reason to protect everyone else. That is strange. Most species, when they survive something terrible, build higher walls. They protect their own more fiercely. They become, in a logical and understandable way, more closed. Humanity became more open. Not naive, they are not naive. The warships are real and the defense grid works, but open. They became the species that shows up 14 minutes after the distress signal, with the weapons down and the food already warm, asking how many of you there are. I am in the library now. It is a building made of Kareth 4 stone, pale gold, with windows that face the long western meadow where the fan trees grow in rows. The archive is almost full. We began adding to it 3 years ago. New records, not just records of what we lost. Records of what we are building. First words, first structures, first arguments about which direction the main road should run. The ordinary documents of a people continuing. There is a child who comes to visit me sometimes. She is 4 years old and her name is Ereth, and she was the first Velkaran born on this world. She has never known any other home. She does not understand yet what the archive means, but she likes to sit beside me while I work because I let her hold the oldest data crystals, the ones from before, and turn them over in her small hands, and watch the light move through them. She asked me once what was inside them. I told her, everything. Everyone who came before you. Everyone who made it possible for you to be sitting here holding that crystal in the light of a sun that is not the sun we were born under, on a world that is ours because a species we had never met decided, before they knew anything about us at all, that we were worth showing up for. She thought about that for a moment, the way children think, with her whole face engaged in the effort. Then she held the crystal up to the window and watched the light come through it and said, "Pretty." "Yes," I told her. "Yes, it is." I updated the count that morning, 11,413. And for the first time since the glassing, when I wrote a number in the record, I was not counting the dead. I was counting the living.